Montana will burn on the cross of Bitcoin.
Trump was against Bitcoin in 2019.
He said that people are dying from Bitcoin mining.
Most likely going to become president of the United States.
Because I had never had more of like a look of shock on my face.
Republicans or Democrats,
they hate each other.
Let's just kill Bitcoin education.
It reminds me of a political party.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Sergey Gerasimovich, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Easy Blockchain. In my podcast, we're going to talk about crypto, Bitcoin, investments, and much more. And today, I have my good guest, my favorite guest so far.
Oh, so far?
Yeah.
All right.
Dennis Porter, a big crypto advocate, CEO and co-founder of Satoshi Action Fund. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, man. Excited. Ready to have this conversation. And thank you for all your support over the years.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we have not been the biggest supporter, but we definitely try to do as much as we can because I know you're doing a lot of work for crypto community, for Bitcoin community in general.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell the audience what you do, what Satoshi Action Fund does?
Yeah, absolutely. So Satoshi Action Fund is a nonprofit. It's a 501c4, and what we do is we try to advocate on behalf of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, and we want to ensure that the United States is the best place in the world for Bitcoin. That was our mission for the first 2 years. In fact, we feel like we've accomplished that mission to an extent. I started to talk to people internationally a lot more after, performing a lot of successes here in the United States, producing a lot of successes, and they started to say, well, the U.S. is the best place for Bitcoin, so you need to change your mission. So our new mission is that we want to unlock the true potential of Bitcoin, and we do that through policy and education. We educate lawmakers and regulators on the benefits of Bitcoin and digital assets, and then we also craft public policy, and we get that public policy introduced and then passed into law to be able to advance the technology. Beyond that, we've impacted or educated over 1,000 lawmakers, everything from, handing a Bitcoin book to every single congressional office by hand, walking them from one office to the next. It's 535 offices we did in one day to, producing peer-reviewed research for lawmakers to better understand the value of the technology, to doing luncheons, to doing learning sessions for these lawmakers. Sort of the education process is always ongoing, but that's our main mission, is to ensure that we unlock the potential of this technology, and we see that doing that through policy and education with lawmakers is the number one way to approach it.
I agree. Education is the key in everything. I mean, if you do not know anything about something, first of all, you deny it, right? But if you learn more about something, you actually start accepting and being curious about it. So you talk about the mission of Satoshi Action as making Bitcoin more popular in the United States. But why? Why would regular citizen care about Bitcoin in America?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. Like initially when I discovered Bitcoin.
And when was it, by the way?
2017.
Okay.
2017,
How did you learn about it?
I discovered Bitcoin. My friend came up to me and he said, there is this Bitcoin thing. I'd never heard the word in my life. Just 2017, very first time I heard the word. And he said, there's this Bitcoin. It's perfectly anonymous internet money. And I was like, no, that's not possible.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, there's no way. So at that point in my life, and to this day, I still believe that anything on the internet is not perfectly anonymous. So I went to go study Bitcoin to prove my friend wrong. And in that process of trying to prove my friend wrong, I discovered a lot of things about Bitcoin that I did like and I did think were really impactful and were really important for society. The number one that was, the biggest thing that just struck out to me was the ability for Bitcoin to bank the unbanked. So right now there's 1.8 billion people globally who are unbanked or who have a lack of access to financial services. And Bitcoin can help create the divide for those groups to be able to finally have access to a savings technology and also a spending technology. Think about it. There's almost 2 billion people who are not able to participate in the economy. They can't save for their first house. They can't even save up for their, first textbook to be able to go to school. And so this huge amount of human potential being lost, constantly 2 billion people are unbanked and unable to participate in the economy and unable to see the potential that they have to offer the world. The next Einstein could be born in one of these countries and we would never know, because they never had the ability to save up for their first physics textbook. So that's the very first reason why I fell in love with Bitcoin. And I've gone on to love so many more things about it, specifically in the mining world.
Right.
The ability to balance the grid, the ability to mitigate methane emissions, provide rural jobs, to enhance renewable energy. These are a number of different things that society and lawmakers already know that they want. And so we help them understand how Bitcoin is able to fix some of those problems.
Well, so you're talking about 2 billion people who are unbacked worldwide, right? So for those people, the Bitcoin's mission is clear. Yeah, I can be my own bank. I don't have money. I do not have money. If I do have money, inflation eats it. I want to store my value somewhere. That's kind of clear use case for me. But in the United States, I live somewhere in Indiana or Minneapolis or Oregon. Doesn't matter, right? I can just go and open a bank account. Like, why would I care? I can open a bank account. I can use my credit card. I can go and just spend my money in the grocery store. So why for regular citizens in here it matters? So how would you explain the value to regular Jill and Joe?
I mean, the biggest thing for everyone, I think, is really help them understand how Bitcoin as a technology can help them to protect themselves from the runaway inflation that we've experienced over the recent years, and will continue to experience. I mean, currencies that we have today, fiat currencies, one of their most powerful, one of their biggest abilities is to be able to be flexible. And oftentimes that flexibility gets abused,
right?
And they become debased. Now in America, we don't experience as much inflation or currency debasement as other countries do. But ultimately, we do experience that. We do experience that monetary debasement. We've doubled and tripled our monetary supply,
right?
And we will continue to do that as time goes on. And so if you want to be able to protect yourself from monetary debasement and theoretically protect yourself from any type of currency collapse, whether that be here in the United States or anywhere in the world, Bitcoin is the number one tool to be able to do that, because Bitcoin as a technology, the asset, it cannot be debased. There's no way to debase it. It's 21 million forever.
Right.
No way to change that. And so people who are worried about the value of the dollar, the purchasing power of the dollar into the future, certainly should be looking at Bitcoin as a tool for them to protect themselves.
So is this a gold argument, right? A lot of people call Bitcoin as digital gold, right? You can use this against inflation hedge. You can store it, but instead of keeping it in a bank as a paper gold, you can actually have it on your flash drive, right? Is this the case you pushing to people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say it's a savings technology.
Okay.
Bitcoin as an asset is a powerful savings technology where you can store your wealth, you can store your collective efforts in the world into this somewhat of a battery, right? And be able to ensure that you're able to hold on to that economic power and be able to spend that economic power far into the future. Unlike the dollar, where there is the ability to debase it into infinity, once you buy Bitcoin, not only do you, once you self-custody that Bitcoin, will you be able to hold that Bitcoin in perpetuity, but no one can come along and change it and be able to inflate it and be able to extract value out of it. So it's a very, very, very stable in the sense that the monetary supply is extremely stable. And so people in America obviously don't deal with these runaway inflation numbers like they do in the other parts of the world. But it is absolutely a problem that we face. And additionally, I think some of the areas where we do know the value of Bitcoin is in the Bitcoin mining sector in particular.
Yes.
And it's an area where lawmakers are very interested as well. As a lawmaker, especially at the state level, you're always trying to look for ways to be able to add value to your state. Mm-hmm. As a lawmaker, you want to go out and produce results so that you get voted back up. You can maybe grow your political career. And the way that you do that is by producing value for your state through public policy generally. So Bitcoin mining as a technology can balance the grid, can mitigate methane emissions, produce rural jobs, enhance renewables. It can help with data center and electrical infrastructure build out in the state. And all of those things are things that lawmakers already know that they want and that they want to be able to have their state lead on. And so what we do is we go in and we help them understand, not just from our own, talking about it, saying, oh, wow, Bitcoin mining does these great things. We show them real world examples and through real credible evidence-backed research that the things that we're saying are in fact true. And so we've done that in a number of different ways. We recently launched back in 2023, we launched our research arm. We brought on an academic and we started to produce real credible evidence-backed research, some of which has gone through the peer-reviewed process. And because lawmakers want to see that the intellectual work has been done to back up these claims. And oftentimes there's something about peer-reviewed research that lawmakers just love when something gets peer-reviewed. But ultimately our goal there is to use that peer-reviewed research to back up the claims that Bitcoin mining is good so that these states can help. So the state lawmakers can be able to adopt Bitcoin mining as a technology on their energy infrastructure and for their state itself.
So what is your pitch on to policymakers when you talk about Bitcoin mining? Is it jobs? Is it so you mentioned grid balancing? What is the best thing that they're happy about? Was it tax revenue, jobs? What is it?
I think the most obvious one is the ability for Bitcoin mining to participate in the grid and to balance the grid. The ability to balance the grid is growing in importance, especially as we go through the energy transition.
And may I interrupt you, Dennis? For those who do not know in this podcast, what balancing the grid means?
Yeah, certainly. So the grid has to be, the supply and demand on the grid has to be met at all times.
Okay.
So if you ever are in a situation where you are not producing enough energy and it doesn't meet the demand, the grid can collapse. So if you are, let's say you're in a city of 100,000 people and you all of a sudden one more person moves in and you don't provide the energy to be able to cover 100,001, you'll start to notice that there's a degradation in the delivery of power. Now, one person, of course, is a very small amount of energy. Is maybe not going to see the impacts directly right away.
New subdivision, for example.
Let's say a new subdivision. Yeah. Let's say you add a whole new grocery store in, a shopping mall in, and you're not accounting for that addition of that new demand for power. You're going to see destabilization on the grid. And that starts with brownouts and rolling blackouts. But ultimately, those are just tools to help mitigate the problem that exists, which is that there's not enough supply to meet that demand. The worst case scenario is that you end up in what's called a black start, or a system-wide outage, where you see total collapse. And that means that the generators are offline and you're having to reboot the grid, piecemeal back one by one. That you do not want to go through that experience, and grid operators will do anything possible to avoid that. Rolling brownouts and blackouts are a tool, a bad tool. A better tool is instead to go to customers and say, hey, the grid is a little strained right now. Would you be willing to shut off so that we can make sure that supply and demand is met? And these are what are called ancillary service programs that have been developed. And Bitcoin miners, as well as anybody else, that participates in the grid, theoretically can participate in those programs.
So you basically hear healing this theory about Bitcoin being bad for energy. Apparently, it's vice versa.
Yes.
Apparently, having Bitcoin mining on the grid really helps the local community and the grid operators.
Absolutely.
This is unbelievable because, starting 2017, 2018, there has been so many attacks on Bitcoin, and that it's killing the babies, that it has a crazy environmental impact, and that we're going to all die till 2025, I guess. 2030, right? Because of Bitcoin going to be sucking out all the energy. But here we see this fundamental change. We're changing the perception that instead of being a sucker of the energy, it's basically helping the energy markets.
That's right.
That's fascinating. Is this the best story that you tell the policymakers?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the policymakers are concerned, when it comes to Bitcoin mining, it's the reason why we focus on this story is not just because it's theoretical; it's because it's happening in real time. As a really quick example, in Texas in 2021, there was a huge winter storm that came through, Winter Storm Uri, and that storm brought the Texas grid to its knees. At the end of the storm, when all things were done, there was billions of dollars in damage done to the grid itself, and hundreds of people died because they had lost access to power in the middle of an extreme winter storm. Well, fast forward to about a year later, and another big storm comes through called Winter Storm Elliott. Almost the exact same scenario occurs, except for this time, a lot of Bitcoin miners had migrated to the Texas grid, had plugged into the Texas grid, and had started participating in their grid balancing programs that they had offered. And so when the next winter storm hit, when Elliott came through, those Bitcoin miners that were there and ready and willing to participate in balancing the grid during peak demand wound down and delivered 1.7 gigawatts of energy back to the grid. That amount of energy is a non-trivial amount of energy, to put it in context.
Yeah,
1.7 gigawatts is enough power to heat 1.7 million small homes.
Wow.
Or it's enough energy to energize over 300 large hospitals. So during the middle of that storm, all of a sudden you have these miners, raising their hands saying, we'll be the ones to balance the grid. We'll be the ones to help ensure that heat is being delivered to these homes and these hospitals are able to keep the lights on.
That's unbelievable, right? So because the perception here that Bitcoin is not just some funny money, but this is technology that integrates in our day-to-day life. Basically, when we turn on the lights in the house and in Texas grid, Bitcoin is participating there. I've been following you on Twitter, and I know that you travel literally like every day, right? You live on the plane.
I don't even post all my
I'm sure. So you travel from one place to another, and I guess the goal there is because you just started this podcast saying that you meet with policymakers in person and you basically hand them the educational materials. Can you walk me and the audience through like a process of passing a bill?
Definitely. So you start, well, it's a little bit different on the state level versus the federal level, and some states vary, but generally the process is that you're going to find a lawmaker who's interested in working on the type of legislation that you want to get pushed forward. You encourage them to introduce that policy, so they will introduce it, and then you'll get an official bill number.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you have a bill number, your bill will get assigned to, or that bill will get assigned to a committee, the committee of jurisdiction. That could be, the energy committee, that could be the utility committee. Just kind of depends on what the Speaker of the House or the Senate, where they want to place the bill. So they choose where the bill gets placed and what committee it gets placed in. And then after it gets placed in a committee, you usually have anywhere from sometimes it's 4 days, sometimes it's a couple weeks or a month to show up. There's no, you don't get a plan ahead. It's the bill's introduced, and then once the legislative process starts, usually in January, February is when most states start. You get that bill number, and then you go right into your committee process hopefully as fast as possible, which is better, because if you wait, these sessions end and then your bill dies. So you want to get going right away. You get that committee, you show up to testify and to talk about the bill during the committee. You hope that the testimony of the others there in the room is enough to be able to encourage the different members of that committee to be voting in favor of the bill. If you get a favorable vote, which means you just need a majority of votes, and usually it's 7, 9, or up to 20, people that are in these committees. Tennessee actually has some very big committees. That's where we're at right now.
Interesting.
But some are very small. You just need a majority vote to vote in favor, and you move to the next stage, which is where you'll go to the House floor or the Senate floor for a floor vote, and then you repeat that process on the other side in every state except for Nebraska, where it's just a Senate. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't have both sides.
So who testifies? You said there's just testimony. Is it is it part of your mission to go there and testify, or there are other participants?
I try to testify as often as I can, but I don't always testify, and there are definitely other participants, and there can be people that testify against the bill as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you been in front of those people? What do they say? How do they fight this technology? What do they say in those rooms?
It's always very interesting, the attacks that are lobbied on Bitcoin and the legislative process when we're trying to get these bills passed, but usually it is groups that think that Bitcoin mining is going to boil the oceans and destroy the world.
What we just talked about, right?
And so
bad view of cryptocurrency. And Bitcoin.
Yeah, they misunderstand Bitcoin completely, and so they come in and they try to oppose it. One of them I will never forget. This guy came and he did this very impassioned breakdown of why Bitcoin mining was bad, and he had this really interesting line. He said that it was in Montana, and he said, "Montana will burn on the cross of Bitcoin."
Oh my God!
It was just very hyperbolic.
Wow.
The funny part was it was funny really, but partway through the testimony, he said that people are dying from Bitcoin mining. I wish the camera, because there's hearing room cameras that point throughout the room, and I wish one was on me, because I had never had more of a look of shock on my face.
But what is your argument when the guy says that people are dying from Bitcoin mining? What do you tell?
Luckily, I think the claim was so outlandish that I didn't even have to rebut it or refute it. The guy actually tried to leave the room really quickly after he gave his testimony, which you definitely do not want to try to do. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to stay and be there for the whole process in case they have additional questions. One of the lawmakers is like, "Hey, hold on, we want to ask you questions. You made some pretty outlandish claims.
Where is the proof?"
So he comes back up and he's like, "Hey, you made this claim that people are dying from Bitcoin mining." He's like, "That's a pretty extreme claim. Do you have anything to back that up?" And the guy was like, "Well, I don't have it here with me, and I can get it to you." And the guy was like, and he was kind of a younger guy that was testifying. And so the lawmaker was like, "Son, if you're going to come in here and make wild claims, you better have something to back it up. That's just my piece of advice to you." He gave it to him real straight. So wow. I didn't really have to do anything to rebut it. But yeah, there are wild claims made all the time in that process. And we generally have to be the one to combat it. But luckily in the state of Montana, they had some really smart lawmakers up there that were ready to do it for us.
So basically, if you are not in the room, or there are no people with sane mind and any knowledge about Bitcoin, those claims can go through.
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
We're speaking more and more about passing laws on the state level, but you haven't touched anything on federal level. Is there a particular reason you specifically go to states versus on federal level? I understand the guys in Washington are hard to work with, but like, what was your strategy early on?
I mean, it's a strategy that has been utilized by many different groups.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't invent this strategy. It's a well-worn path, and it's one that you can really see most recently was very successfully utilized by the cannabis industry in the United States. So right now, cannabis is still a federal crime. You can't buy, distribute, own, have a cannabis business.
But it's legal in multiple states already.
75% of the country now has pro-cannabis laws on its books. So the approach that they took was, instead of begging and pleading for the federal government to allow them the right to exist, they went to the states and they said, this industry can provide higher tax revenue, it can provide jobs, and it can reduce crime and increase property values. And all we want to do is be able to exist. And that pitch worked really well for Washington and Colorado. They were the first two states to legalize cannabis. And now, as I said, you've gone from these blue states to even the red states, where you see them adopting, cannabis and allowing it to grow as an industry. And we're pursuing that same exact strategy at Satoshi Action. We want to create a bulwark of states that will protect the industry. The long-term goal is, of course, to impact federal policy, but there's been studies done before, and there's proof and actual sort of different groups that have taken this approach that follow the same trend line as cannabis. There's a lot of different groups that have tried it out and proven that it's worked. But ultimately, when there's a flurry of activity at the state level, you get a bunch of different bills going, introduced, passed into law, there is almost always a federal reaction. Cannabis is a clear example. It's one that we can see right in front of us right now. But the same thing happened for women's suffrage, so women's right to vote. That all happened at the state level. There was a lot of flurry of activity that took place, and then inevitably the federal government reacted to that. The same exact thing can be said about interracial marriage and a number of different issues. They all started at the local level, started at the state level, grassroots approach, and it bubbled up and ultimately resulted in a federal reaction. And even Bloomberg has done a study on this to back up these claims.
Dennis, so I know you compare this to marijuana industry, but marijuana is illegal on federal level, but Bitcoin is not illegal. It's legal. So after meeting with so many people in the industry, in at the conferences with people from the industry like myself and policymakers, why there is such a pushback? No one is banning Bitcoin at federal level. It's there. It's been around for decades.
Oh, they're basically trying, though.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Yeah, absolutely. Specifically, the executive order and the 30% tax on Bitcoin mining. I mean, that was insanity, right? But luckily, there was some negotiation there. I guess lobbying. I'm sure you probably took participation in it as well.
Yeah, we sent, I think, 5,000 letters got sent to members of Congress.
Unbelievable. So who writes those letters?
Advocates.
Oh, wow.
So we do letter writing campaigns pretty commonly for whenever we see that there is a bad piece of legislation moving forward that we think would damage Bitcoin in the United States. The first one that we did was pre-Satoshi Action. And there was the Infrastructure Act, where they were going to do the broker-dealer stuff, and a lot of other bad pieces of policy were coming down the pipeline because of that bill. And we had 10,000 people write in. 10,000 people had written in to oppose.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it was funny because I kept pushing people to write letters, and we actually finally heard back that people were getting sick of the letters coming in. They said, "Please stop." But
that's when you know you're successful.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So that's one approach that we take, and we certainly have seen other efforts. There was a Liz Warren bill that would have backdoor banned self-custody and deeply centralized Bitcoin mining. By creating too many sort of oppressive regulatory modes.
Right.
So there are efforts underway. People are trying to come after Bitcoin. And the people in power in the federal government, they do have somewhat of an incentive to attack Bitcoin because it does disrupt power. Bitcoin disrupts power. It disrupts the money printer. It disrupts finance. It disrupts energy. And so those people that are currently a part of the status quo, they are not appreciative of the fact that Bitcoin is disrupting their power.
And I want to talk more about that. So Trump was against Bitcoin in 2019. He tweeted saying that Bitcoin is some fake money and it's made out of thin air. And the only currency I want to support is US dollar. So that was an example of this bad marketing that the president of the United States was actually paying attention to it. I know he has reversed his views. I mean, not by accident. There's a lot of work has been done. So let's talk about Trump and GOP and political environment around Bitcoin. So in Republican Party's manifesto, they have a new line which says this country going to be pro-crypto, and there is a very important part there, which is right to mine.
Mm-hmm.
So was it you?
This is what we call emergent activity, and this is what I've been saying to people a lot quite recently, is that the reason, why we do what we do at the state level is because we want to prove that these ideas have demand and that there are lawmakers willing to pass them into law and legislatures willing to pass them into law. And then ultimately, because of the work that we do, we see a bottom-up, sort of trickle-up, I should say, effect with our policy. Our ultimate goal is to impact federal policy. But one thing that we didn't keep in mind was the way that it could impact party platforms.
Right.
And so the Republican Party platform, the GOP Party platform recently adopted our right to mine and right to self-custody language into their platform.
Yeah, it's still a big trace of Satoshi Action.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely can see that.
Yeah, it was a huge win because it proved that the work that we do has value. Because a lot of people in Washington D.C. they try to say, "Oh, states don't matter," and of course, they're going to pump their own bag and try to encourage people to focus on the area that they're focused on. I don't fade them at all for that. But at the end of the day, like, we've now proven that state activity matters and that it can have a big impact. I mean, even Senator Lummis agrees. She's, quote tweeted a couple times some of our work saying, the states matter and that we need to be using the states to laboratory democracy. So we're very proud of the fact that the, GOP party platform, despite us being a nonpartisan, bipartisan group, that they did adopt those policy positions that we have been implementing and passing across the country.
So may I have a follow-up question on this? Obviously, Trump is gaining big popularity. Most likely he's going to become a president of the United States, regardless of your political views. But is adopting the Bitcoin language, changing the rhetoric around it, for him is just a popularity contest, or they really mean it?
I think that I have always had a theory and a view on Bitcoin that it doesn't really technically matter if you are doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Bitcoin,
you'll take a win, basically. Regardless who brings it.
Ultimately, Bitcoin benefits from the fact that the former president and someone who is, highly likely, that's not a guarantee, but highly likely to be
regardless of your political views.
Regardless of your political views. Highly likely at this point, just based on the betting markets of the polls, right?
Of course.
I'm not saying that this is just my opinion. This is just even when I talk to Democrats, they're like starting to.
I do want to talk with you about how do you talk to Democrats?
Yeah, definitely. I do talk to a lot of Democrats, and even some Democrats that are like ardently pro-Democrat, definitely on the left, have started to comment that they are pretty concerned that they believe that Trump is going to be the next president. So definitely not just my opinion and not the opinion of those on the right or the polls. It's like, it's a consensus there. Now, Harris could still pull it off. I think she's got a shot now because of the fact that they made the switch. I don't think that there was a shot until the switch was made. But
the Biden administration was very, very, bad for the industry. I mean, it's just crazy. They were killing Bitcoin mining with all those bills, with those surveys, and banking in general. Like, you can't get a bank account for a crypto company. I mean, this is insanity. It's worse than for cannabis businesses.
Yeah, the debanking problem is huge. It's unbelievable. It's insane. We've spent a lot of time focusing on that. We have a whole paper we wrote about it, a 28-page paper that we put together outlining the problem and outlining the potential solutions. So we certainly care a lot about the fact that Bitcoin miners and a lot of other Bitcoin and crypto businesses as well are being debanked. I think it's a truly sort of disgusting behavior.
Right.
You have no way to get a fair trial on these things. They don't even tell you why.
Market.
They don't even tell you why. They just debank you and they say, sorry.
Oh, I'm very much familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of Bitcoin miners are.
Oh yeah. We got our bank account shut down multiple times early on. Yeah.
And it's I think a lot of Americans, they are surprised by that when you tell them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like they're shocked.
Like, why? Like,
even if they don't like Bitcoin, they're just like, wait, you can't get a bank account? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know, because I'm too risky.
Right. Like, but that's how you live life. You just do whatever you want, right? Like, that's the freedom.
Yeah, but not in this industry. So there's a lot of debanking that's taking place, even continuing to take place. And there are a lot of efforts to overcome that. We are really interested in seeing states get into that game because there's a dual banking system in the United States. So the United States is very unique compared to the rest of the world. Almost everywhere other country, they have a federal banking system only. Mm-hmm. In the United States, we have a dual banking system where you have federal banking regulators and then you have state banking regulators. And you can pick which one you want. You can pick if you want to be a state chartered or federally chartered. And then there are other layers of regulation as well. There's the FDIC, which almost all banks have, but you don't have to have it. You can be a fully reserve-backed bank. That's what Caitlin Long is doing. And then you have to have access to a Fed Master account, whether it be direct access by having one or there's an intermediary bank that you work with who has a direct access to a Fed Master account. That is actually the true last hurdle for the space because you can avoid the FDIC by not having FDIC insurance and being fully reserve-backed bank. You can avoid the OCC, which is the federal regulator on state banks, by going and being state chartered, but you cannot avoid a Fed Master account. You have to have access to a Fed Master account. So our push is to say that states should either have their own Fed Master account or they should launch a bank which acts as an intermediary to other banks that gives access to a Fed Master account to anyone. It doesn't even need to be just crypto, right? Because ultimately, there are other industries that are being debanked. It's typically industries that are politically disfavored. So it can be gun manufacturers. It could be, reproductive rights clinics, abortion clinics, otherwise known as. It could be, religious nonprofits. All of these groups have been targeted by debanking in the United States. And so by creating a piece of policy that leads to these banks, which will bank those politically, I would say unpopular groups, although I'm not choosing sides on any of them. I'm just saying some of them are very politically unpopular.
You're a true politician.
Yeah, I'm very truly bipartisan. Bipartisan, I approach it. But by creating this type of policy and creating these types of banks, you can actually end debanking in the United States.
Yeah,
overnight.
100%. I 100% agree. And that's the path to go because otherwise you can use the same template and just go after any industry you want.
Yeah.
Right? Like you just don't like some other industry, don't like, I don't know, Dennis's work, Dennis's education. Oh, let's just kill Bitcoin education.
Let's not give anybody ideas.
Oh yeah, right. We shouldn't be.
Right.
No, that's the problem. Let's go back and talk a little bit about Trump. So he's coming to Nashville for Bitcoin conference.
Sure.
It was announced recently. It's a big deal. He survived the assassination attempt.
Yes,
and everyone thought that this is we took it too far. The things went too far, right? And he may be not going to be coming. But he's still coming. Yeah. So it's coming here to talk about Bitcoin, give the keynote speech. For me, it obviously means that the Republican Party is more pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto, pro-business here. But if we're going to just choose sides all the time, then I don't think we're going to come to consensus at some point. So what about Democratic Party? Are they kind of waking up to this? Don't they see that there's millions of people who own crypto? Bitcoin mining industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, creates jobs in America. We have $2 trillion market cap of all cryptos, right? So it's not something that you can pay attention to if you are a policymaker, right? And it's a new generation. The generation that usually votes Democrat. Younger, educated people, they usually vote Democrats. And now for them, it's a single... how it's called?
Single issue voter block.
Single issue voter. Yeah. Whatever that word, right? So what's going on the other side of the aisle? What do you see?
Who is going and talking to the Democrats about why they need to understand this understand the value of this technology? Bitcoin itself is very in alignment with a lot of, and I know a lot of the people listening to this that are on the right will not like to hear this, but Bitcoin is in alignment with a lot of progressive values. The ability to bank the unbanked is a hugely progressive value. It's an issue that they care deeply about. Having access to financial services, financially inclusive services, is a huge, huge progressive value. I mean, it's probably one of the top 5 most important things to progressives to make sure that regardless of your sex, age, race, sexual orientation, gender, country of origin, religion, doesn't matter. Whatever the thing is, that the ability to truly access financial services, regardless of those things, is so, so important to Democrats. And there is no technology better than Bitcoin for people to be able to access a financial service, and regardless of those sort of potential barriers that could be used to discriminate against people. You literally cannot discriminate with Bitcoin technology.
Absolutely. You don't know who you're sent to. You don't need an ID. You don't need anything, right? Jamie Dimon a big friend of the industry, of course. And his argument is blockchains are great, Bitcoin sucks. Like, how do you answer that?
I mean, blockchain is just a piece of the infrastructure on Bitcoin. And so it's like saying that, like, my steering wheel is amazing, but my car sucks.
Right, exactly, right.
Or the door to my house is amazing, but my house is crap. So it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's a really bad way to think about blockchain.
But it works. Like, he has
people
media coverage, and they oh, blockchain is great. The word blockchain is great. But Bitcoin is just bad.
Blockchains have been around for a long time. So they're
since the inception of internet, I think, right?
As near as the 80s, as old as the 80s is what they say is the original technology goes back that far. And so, if blockchain was so great, like, why weren't people using it before?
Yeah. It became popular because of Bitcoin. It's basically the first real use case blockchain on scale.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's something we have to talk more about out there. And I think you do talk to your policymakers by speaking that language, because I mean, it's so easy to bite on that argument that blockchain is great and Bitcoin is not.
Yeah.
Even though it's literally the same thing. It's like, the first thing, I mean, you just gave a couple examples, like about the house and everything. But so there is this argument internally in the industry. We have Bitcoiners and we call them shitcoiners, but people who like altcoins, right? And we don't like each other. It's like, it's a fight. It's like, you just go, if you go on Twitter.
You know what it reminds me of?
Yeah.
It reminds me of a political party.
Which one, I guess?
So you have Democrats who have moderates, and then they have progressives and liberals.
Right.
And they hate each other.
So Bitcoin is moderates?
I think Bitcoin is actually more the is more the sort of like ideological group. So there's always been an ideological group in the party. So even on the Republican side, you have moderate Republicans, and then you have conservatives.
Yeah,
and they hate each other. And it, like go. Yeah,
and it doesn't help
because they work together when they need to, and so does the crypto and Bitcoin people work together when they need to.
Yeah, but it's so hard.
But when there are instances that arise where they're like, throwing bombs at each other.
Yeah, let's look at this XRP Ripple thing against Bitcoin, and they run the marketing campaigns against Bitcoin, and saying that Bitcoin can kill the world, you're gonna kill the environment. And it's like, dude, you are speaking the language of our enemies. You didn't do that. Like, what are you talking about?
I agree.
I think one of the things that you're trying to promote is Bitcoin to be used as money, and so we do not have a capital gain tax on Bitcoin under $200. So do you believe that, I mean, Bitcoin should be taxed as property in general, and what type of work do you do around it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we do have a $200 de minimis exemption in our core model policy.
Yes.
We firmly believe that in order for Bitcoin to be truly unlocked, that we need to remove capital gains on Bitcoin, because every time you spend Bitcoin, if you spend it, you incur a taxable event. And so tracking that, monitoring that, paying those taxes is something that really hinders the ability for Bitcoin to be used as money. And so it is a big part of our work to be able to start the process of eliminating capital gains on Bitcoin so that it can be used as money.
Right. But don't you think $200 is not really enough with today's level of inflation? $200 is like...
$200 is but yeah, I agree. It's a starting point.
But you want to start somewhere.
The way that we designed it also too is that it's pegged to inflation. So if it has, the currency is debased, then the number would go up. But we do think that it should be much higher than that. We want to remove all capital gains on Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's insanity. Like in order for Bitcoin to be used by design, as Satoshi envisioned it early on, as as digital cash, I mean, we have to get rid of this capital gain tax, because it's just unbelievable. Like, in order for you to use Bitcoin, you have to have 3 accountants filling out taxes.
Right.
It's just not possible. Yes, it's definitely going to create more jobs. That's another argument you can make.
There we go. More accountants.
Bitcoin creates a lot of accounting jobs.
That's right.
But there should be some kind of more push in that direction, because otherwise, I mean, I don't really see the way Bitcoin going to be used more and more as cash versus digital asset. We're definitely going to use Bitcoin as a borderless transactions value moving value through borders. That's always helps. Gold argument that Bitcoin is in digital gold, but as a cash, it's not really visible at this point because of this tax issue. But not a lot of people talk about this, because why is that? Because people do not use it because there are not enough use cases to use it as money. There are not that many options to spend Bitcoin online or in your daily life.
I think it's just difficult to get any, the conversations around taxation are just difficult.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
Department of Treasury, right? Is it because of that?
Well, I just think that a lot of people view Bitcoin as a speculative asset, and that inherently speculative assets, that they should have a capital gains tax on them. That's kind of like built-in sort of mindset with a lot of lawmakers. And so trying to say, I deserve an exemption from that. That's usually a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
Like, well, why? Why should you get an exemption and no one
not
else?
us? Yeah,
right. So that's a long-term project. Would not expect that we will see capital gains removed from Bitcoin in the near future, but we need to start doing the work now to get to that future.
So Dennis, how people who listen to the podcast can help you with your message, can help you? Where do they find you? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, you can go to satoshiaction.io is our website. It has the vast majority of our work that we've done. There needs a little bit of updating because we do new stuff quite regularly. So you can go there to check us out, sign up for our newsletter. We also always ask people to look into supporting us financially. At the end of the day, we are a 100% donor-driven organization, and everything that we do is an extension of the generosity of our donors and the corporate companies that come in and want to support the work that we're doing as well. So if you're a company that you want to get involved, we have a whole corporate track. And then if you're an individual who really believes in the mission and the vision of what we're doing as well, I'd love to jump on a call with you and better understand, how we can help the United States not only lead on the technology, but also unlock the true potential of Bitcoin as well.
Why did you decide to launch Satoshi Action Fund?
Yeah. I woke up one day and I realized that I was increasingly worried over my own ability to access Bitcoin. I think back in 2020, 2021, no one really thought the U.S. government was going to be favorable towards Bitcoin. We've come a long way since then.
Yes.
But back then, people were like, they're going to crush this stuff. They're going to come after it really hard. And so, I woke up and I realized that I need to do everything humanly possible to make sure that not only I can access the technology, but so many others here in America can as well. And that's really why Satoshi Action Fund exists.
How many people do you have working for you?
We have about 7 people right now. So that includes our new director of development. It also includes our science director, our policy director, and then we have an ops person, and then my 2 co-founders.
I mean, that's a lot of work for 7 people. You guys been crushing it.
Thank you. Yeah, we certainly work hard, and that's why we need more support so we can have more people come in and also work hard as well. Because we don't, when we add someone in, it just allows me to be able to spend more time on the things that matter the most. And so, we're looking forward to 2025 legislative cycle. It's going to be a very interesting time. We're making a few transitions and changes, but we're really well positioned not only to help states introduce this public policy and support it, but also even groups that are not crypto groups. I think this is a really interesting thing that we realized in 2024 is that a lot of these think tanks at the state level are very interested in Bitcoin and digital assets. And so a lot of those groups, even though they're not crypto groups, are now getting behind our policy and supporting it. So we're looking forward to expanding that network of groups that promote our public policy.
So Dennis, I'm going to ask you a few questions, short questions, and I would like you to answer them basically quickly. Elizabeth Warren or Cynthia Lummis?
Cynthia Lummis. Sorry, that's an easy one.
Larry Fink or Jamie Dimon?
I think I am hearing great things about Larry Fink. Yeah, Jamie Dimon has a lot of work to do to get himself back into the good graces of Bitcoiners, I think.
Oregon or Tennessee?
Well, the food sucks here, so.
Since we're on this,
and we're in Tennessee. Just people are,
really quick thing.
Portland, Oregon has amazing food. Just so people, if you ever want to come out, get great food, but also with some of the best beer and wine in the world.
Republicans or Democrats? I have to ask this.
Yeah, I can't pick a side there. So,
you don't have to.
Yeah, right. Well, it looks like both groups are coming around to Bitcoin here soon. So, obviously I have my own personal political views, but I think it's critical that we do everything we can to move both sides forward. And then, once both sides are on board, I think we should have vigorous debates over how we do Bitcoin. The biggest thing that people get, we need to overcome as a country is we need to stop fighting over whether or not we should Bitcoin and start fighting over how we should do Bitcoin.
Bitcoin over Ethereum.
Bitcoin.
That was easy, right?
Very easy. That's the easiest one. You've asked all the whole time.
I know. This has been a pleasure talking to you, man. Yeah, I appreciate your time. We covered a lot of good topics. I'm looking forward to more work from you guys, and I'm looking forward to supporting your organization. And I hope everyone in this audience can also chip in and check your website and look how many good things you've done. Thank you. Appreciate it, Sergey. Yeah. Like crypto Bitcoin is such a political issue. Yeah. Honestly, you want to be careful with that, because if you start talking and really say like Trump or Biden, and now someone you choose is like, you said like Biden, like, okay, now, Dennis said Biden. Oh my God, we cancel this guy. Yeah. Or vice versa, right? So so everything is so
very polarized
right now, right? Yeah. And it's hard to imagine how I can fit into that polarization world yet, but I think I'm going to be all right.
You can find, so you don't, it doesn't always have to be Republican and Democrat. You can be, Bitcoin.
But that's the best topic to talk about. People love that thing.
Oh yeah, but like Bitcoin versus Ethereum is a big one too.
Yeah,
that was a fight, but there will be new ones. So there's new ones that come.
Yeah,
around the corner where it's like there's a battle or some sort. Yeah. So like you'll find it and you'll be like, okay, this is my time to scream into the void.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring value. My goal is not only just to have a bunch of followers. I really want to bring value. I'm a self-made man. I think I've done some things in my life, and I want to kind of, have a message out there. And my message, right? I don't want to just follow what I was trending, as I mentioned. I want to do the things that kind of are close to me. That's important.